But let's begin talking about cash. Now, I know a lot of you have always been a bit perturbed by the fact that it's harder and harder to use cash. And I think even a couple of weeks ago, Macquarie Bank announced they were no longer accepting cash at all, which for a bank is kind of extraordinary. And if you read any analysis of how we pay for things in this country, you'll see that cash payments are going down year on year. And many of us don't have a choice. I mean, if you want to pay rent or pay for Netflix, it's all direct debit now. You can hardly pay for these things with cash. So it was amazing to read this week that in the UK, payments using coins and notes rose 7% last year. Now, that's a really interesting thing. Why are more people over in the UK paying for things in cash when banks and institutions are trying to direct them the other way? Well, there's a simple answer to that. It is the cost of living crisis. Because, and I'm sure you would know this if you used to get pay packets stuffed full of cash back in the day, it is easier to see what you are spending when you buy things with cash. It is a painful experience parting with cash, because sometimes you see how your money is disappearing and how quickly it can disappear. So I'd like to ask you right now, 1300 222 891, are you still using cash and why? Because there's even a lot of younger people who are returning to cash doing something called cash stuffing. And we're going to talk about that now, because cash stuffing was something that I reckon my daughter's grandparents would have done. My parents might have done a long time ago. And younger Australians are starting to do this also in a way to combat cost of living pressures. So 1300 222 891, why do you still use cash? And is it so you don't spend as much? Let's talk to a financial therapist about this. Her name is Jane Monica Jones. Hi, Jane.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I was flabbergasted to read that cash is going up in the UK by 7%. That is bucking a global trend, isn't it?
It is completely. I mean, we're in a completely financial digital world at the moment. As you said, that, the ease of being able to pay for everything in our life is done through money that's somehow a little bit detached from us, and to our detriment in a way, that we don't have that kind of experience when it's sitting in our wallet and seeing, as you said, it going down, down, down. So I'm not surprised at all, particularly when things are tough, that people want to get a little bit more hold of their money. And that is a real sort of visceral, real sort of physical experience. So totally understand it.
Now, cash stuffing is something that I reckon my grandparents would have done. And this is, the ABC did an interesting report on this, Jane, where people get they withdraw their pay in cash and they have envelopes marked food, maybe entertainment, maybe, other things, and they put a certain amount of money in each envelope and, hopefully try and save some at the end of it. Can you explain that and why it might be beneficial?
Yeah, so, look, when we think about it in times of depression, economic depression, where our grandparents, let's say, may have taken the money because they don't feel the trust of systems, that banks may fall down, or that even, and you can kind of understand it, don't trust that all these bank fees, and particularly when money is tight, you don't want your bank to be taking away these little portions of our money. So it gives us this kind of sense of safety and confidence and a level of trust when we take ownership of physical cash. Yeah. Now that would be totally real when it comes to, we can have identity theft. If you lose your phone, you might potentially have the loss of access to your cards and someone else being able to access your banking. So it is a kind of trust and fear of, not being able to have control of our money. It's a really great policy that we might put something in jars or we might put it in envelopes. Again, it gives us the sense of separation when our accounts are kind of one big giant, account that's not sort of divided. We don't have visibility so much around our spending, and that tap of a machine or a card or swipe is kind of mindless. We can't really have a sense of it.
And also, there's fees that are incurred. I had to book a flight the other day, and then of course at the end of the process you get there's a 0.27 fee for paying with a card. Not that you can pay for a flight in cash anymore, but these are things that happen even when you go to the certain supermarkets or maybe other places. Jane, there's a fee. So it does. I mean, obviously. The thing is, this is something that's very good for managing cost of living pressures, I guess, having cash to help you budget. But obviously, I mean, do you think it's still a niche thing? Do you think it's going to take hold? I think it's a really good idea.
I do think it is a good idea because it gives you just a real relationship with your money, and that's always a good thing. Often, if we are a bit overwhelmed, we may not watch our spending as much. So having that kind of relationship, being really engaged with our finances in some way, is a really good thing. I do think it's a bit niche. I mean, humans like to take shortcuts, and maybe a shortcut is a lot easier to tap than it is to physically go to the bank or the ATM, pull it out, divvy it up. Humans are pretty much like to have shortcuts. So maybe not everyone will do it, but for those that are doing, I think it's really empowering. And, there is a lot of financial behaviour research that says the pain of having your hand passing over those dollars is actually real. It's actually physical. You actually experience that emotional or physical pain, but you don't feel it so much when you're tapping on a machine. So it's a good thing. That pain, that resisting that pain may make you think about this choice, this choice of spending.
You're listening to Jane Monica Jones. She's a financial therapist. We're talking about the resurgence of cash in the UK. Payments using coins and notes have actually risen 7% last year, and this is because people in the UK are trying to budget better. They're obviously fearful about inflation and the cost of living, and so they're using cash as a way to manage their budgets. And I'm asking you on 1300 222 891, do you also use cash, and do you find that helps you save money? Before we get to some calls, just letting you know there's been an accident on Brighton Road heading towards the bottom of Cement Hill. Traffic is backed up to O'Halloran Hill, thanks to Roy who called it in. So there's been an accident on Brighton Road heading towards town at the bottom of Cement Hill. Traffic is backed up to O'Halloran Hill. Anyway, let's get back to cash, its benefits and why you might still like it. Phil joins us from Woodside. G'day, Phil.
G'day, Jules. The other day I decided to pay some bills with cash and I wanted $1,100. So I went to the local bank, which is the only bank left with an ATM in Woodside, and the ATM was out of order for the second time that I've gone to use it. So I went to the ATM in the supermarket and I found out that the limit that I could get out was $500. And it says on the machine, I actually took a screenshot, a direct charge fee of $2.50. So I go to take the $500 out, they charged me $2.90. But then I could take the whole amount, the whole $1,100, but it charged me $2.90 3 times. So I had to pay nearly $9 just to get that $1,100 out. They're crooks.
Wow. I mean, I thought that a lot of the ATMs had to have foregone those charges, Phil. What was it, an ATM from a major bank?
No, it's a DC Payments. It's called, but so it's not wasn't a bank because it's in the supermarket. But the banks at the moment are saying, oh well, no one's using our branches. Well, that's because they've made it impossible over the years. They've reduced the services so much that why would you go anyway? Because you're not going to get any service.
Thank you, Phil. And this is another thing, Jane. Back in the day, I know all banks were charging money if you used an ATM that wasn't theirs, and there's still charges that exist. I think there's fewer charges, but this is the other thing. It's actually hard to get cash these days.
Yeah, it is. And look, that's the nature of, I suppose we would say the profit margin of banks is that they're reducing their overheads by having less locations to service and certainly less ATMs to service. So, it is an obvious sort of strategy, profit strategy by banks. But I think the thing that maybe even that caller was just sort of alluding to, it's that kind of coercive control that we're being corralled in having to do digital payments, regardless of our own sort of free will or what we actually choose. So I think it could almost be a sort of a libertarian idea or a fight back against the system to say, hey, this is my money, this is what I've earned, and I have a right to use it and move with it and play with it in the way that I want.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a friend of mine who had to drive 40 minutes across town because her mum had, she had to pay bills online and something happened, when there's a bug in your computer and things. And I think if I was to open the phones on, have you ever had to help a parent pay something online, and they used to pay with it in cash, you'd get a lot of calls, Jane. Let's go back to the phone. Cheryl joins us from the mid-north as we talk about the resurgence of cash in the UK to help Britons manage budgets. And is this something that you've thought about? Hi, Cheryl.
Yeah, hi, Jules. I've used cash for everything I can. And I've noticed when I go around to different places now that a lot of the businesses that never used to charge you the fees are starting to charge the fees back to you for using a card. So I thought, well, that's good. I'm not using a card. And I'm lucky enough to have one of the big 4 bank ATMs in our town. So that's not too bad. I can get my money out without having to pay a fee. And I just about get out a set amount of money on the week that I get paid. And then I know what I've got to do. And what you were saying about putting them into packets, when I first started work many, many moons ago, I used to do that. I'd lay out all my money to what I had to have, and then whatever was left over after that was mine to do what I like with.
And Cheryl, did you find that helped you save money?
Oh, yeah, certainly did. Very much so. And the other thing I went into a dress shop some time ago now, and I wanted to purchase something, and they said, we only have cards. I said, it's okay, madam, and I just put the goods on the desk and went to walk out. Next minute, they were chasing me up and said, no, the boss said we can take it, because I was paying in cash.
It's almost inconceivable, isn't it, Cheryl? If you go back 30 years ago to think that someone in a shop would say, when you produce cash, they would say, that's a problem. It's just sort of so strange to think about that. Thank you, Cheryl. There we go. There's a good example of someone using cash stuffing, putting their pay in different envelopes to help them budget. And of course, Jane, no one's saying that you should hoard all your cash at home. It's just a way to help you manage, I guess, your weekly or monthly budget. And if you do save money, you can put that cash back in a bank and earn some interest on it.
Absolutely. The piece is about having awareness of what your banking situation or your financial situation is. And sometimes when we are doing the digital banking, we feel more detached. Cash in hand makes it feel very real, and we can also see the denominations, and we can see, more importantly, it dwindling or getting smaller as we go through our day. So it's a great strategy to just get more connected.
And someone like Scott Pape, who is the Barefoot Investor, will advise that when you're teaching your kids about money to give them cash, because there's a whole generation growing up, Jane, that has never really used cash. I think they're only ever going to be digital users, and they're also online shoppers, and I think that's going to be a real problem for future generations to manage budgets. Let's go to Andy from Angle Park. G'day, Andy.
G'day, Jules, and your guest. I just had a curly one today. I went into a bank to deposit $200 into my wife's Gold Saver account, and the bank teller told me, do you have authorisation to use this, to put money into this account? I said, that's what I normally do. And she said, well, as of the 1st of August, you can't do that anymore because you're not authorised to. And so, oh my godfathers. Then she said, have you got a smartphone? We can go outside and do it outside on the thing, and they'll ring you. And no, I'm not interested in doing anything on mobile phones, smartphones, internet banking, not going there. So I'll go to my bank and do a transfer. They wanted to charge me $35 to do it.
So this is just a deposit cash, Andy?
To deposit cash just cash, $450 bills into a Commonwealth Bank saving account. And I'm not allowed to do it because I'm not authorised to deposit money into her bank account. I didn't want to know the balance. I didn't want to withdraw money. I just wanted to put it in and get a receipt for the $200. I would have stapled that to the statement at home, and that's all I want to do, and I'm not allowed to do it anymore.
Wow, that's almost unbelievable, Andy. Back to you, Jane, on that. I mean, this just shows, I guess, how on the nose cash is.
Yeah, look, I mean, I wonder about that, because it does become, in, say, certain generations where older generations are more used to actually dealing with cash, dealing with certain banking systems, that may, it's excluding, in a way, certain ways of people doing bank for certain generations, certainly older generations, and I'd be concerned about that.
I guess there's a suspicion around cash now. If you do go in a bank with cash, wanting to put it in someone's account, I'm not saying, that's the only mentality I can think. That would make it so difficult for him to put money in his wife's account. But that's extraordinary. Anyway, we're going to come back with more calls. You're listening to Jules Schiller, ABC Radio Adelaide and around South Australia today, and also Jane Monica Jones. She's a financial therapist. We're talking about the resurgence of cash in the UK. It's gone up 7% last year to help people manage cost of living pressures. Is this something that you do? Give us a call.
Breakfast with Nikolai and Stacey.
As it stands right now, the public housing the government owns, they won't be used as part of this home share program.
Breakfast.
That is absolutely not what is happening here, Stacey. And on a small scale, well-screened, well-supported program, I felt comfortable they were going to go about this in a way that won't create that risk.
Don't miss Breakfast
with Nikolai and Stacey
on ABC Radio Adelaide.
On 891 AM,
digital radio,
and the ABC Listen app.
You're with Jules Schiller
on ABC Radio Adelaide, South Australia and Broken Hill.
Arthur joins us from Athelston. Hi, Arthur.
How you going there, Jules? I had an experience the other day. I went into Woolies, which I normally do a lot of times, and I draw cash out. And this time I couldn't draw cash out under over $200. So reduced the $500 down to $200, and therefore I never drew anything out. I went to the bank to get the money, and I thought they're heading towards a cashless society.
So, Arthur, do you normally withdraw the money and then spend the cash in Woolies as a way to kind of, see your budget?
No. I give the money to my wife, and she puts it in envelopes.
Yeah.
And, like her other people do.
Yeah.
To cover all the expenses that she needs to do. So I went to then because of their new policy, trying to force people into cashless society, I went to the bank and I drew it out the ATM at the local bank.
Yeah.
But I just think they're pushing us to a cashless society regardless.
Well, I think, putting limits on withdrawals, it's kind of odd, isn't it, Arthur? Because you can transfer up to 50 grand or 10 grand or something digitally. Only be able to take out $200 is strange. Do you think that would be security, Jane? Or do you think that there's not enough cash in ATMs? Or do you think it's Arthur is right? They're just trying to discourage the use?
I think essentially what it is that takes labour for it to be stocked by an employee. If they don't have the bank or if they don't have the teller, then that's an overhead that they don't have to manage anymore. If it's all done digitally, it's all, it can be done, behind the scenes. It doesn't take manpower to go out and change the cash. So again, it's just a financial or a profit strategy by banks to reduce their overheads. Essentially, cash is expensive. It's got to be transported. It's got to be managed. It's got to be looked after. If you don't have that, if it's all just numbers in the zeros and the ones and the zeros, that's not as expensive to move around.
Beverly has called on 1300 222 891. Hi, Beverly.
Hi, Jules. How are you? Enjoying the program as usual.
Thank you.
I seem to recall many years ago that the bank brought in legislation that you couldn't be paid in cash anymore. I'm a woman of a certain age, and when I first started work, you got your little brown envelope full of cash.
Yes.
When it changed and it had to be all done electronically, it just handed the banks, they've got us in a stranglehold. You can't survive without a bank account. You've got to pay the fees. And I think, even with the financial crisis that we're going through at the moment with interest rates going up, that's just handing the banks more money, and they're making disgusting profits.
Well, yeah, they are making some decent profits. A lot of people are at the moment, Beverly. Look, that's a good thing. I'm not sure if this is in your wheelhouse, Jane, but there was legislation I know to... Is it illegal to get paid in cash? I mean, I imagine there was a lot of problems with cash payments, with armed robberies and Armaguard and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But did it become illegal, or did it just become, de rigueur not to get paid in cash.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's illegal. I don't think it's illegal at all. In a way, I would wonder if there's, a caller out there that would know around that you're not allowed to refuse currency in Australia. I don't think so. I think if someone's ready to pay for it, they have to accept the tender that is available. So I don't think you're allowed to actually refuse it. I think it has a lot to do with, maybe it has to do with profits, but the reasoning might be that, it could be money laundering, it could be proceeds of crime, all that sort of stuff. And so that could be the justification why certain organisations like banks would say, we're just not accepting cash. But I'm pretty sure that, if you've got legal tender, whether it's dollar notes or even a stamp, you can buy stuff in Australia, and I think that's part of the law.
Now, texts are coming in. Paul says he doesn't think you can deposit more than $1,000 in cash into any account in one day, and he wants to know why is that. And other people, one guy just said he went to the post office to try and withdraw $200 10 minutes ago, and they said, we don't have that much, come back tomorrow. So obviously there's a shortage of cash, and there seems to be a limit of how much you can deposit in cash to an account, which I guess would be annoying for some people. Let's go to Jean in South Plympton. Hi, Jean.
Hi, how are you? A great show, guys.
Thanks, Jean. What are your thoughts?
Mine was really funny. When all the power went out in Adelaide that time, I grabbed my son and we were trying to get a few things to eat, and the only thing, most places only dealt with cash because all the electronic registers and whatever were down, and you couldn't use the card. I'm a big cash man. I really don't like what the banks are doing, and the amount of branches that have closed because you can't use cash is really sad to see. And the unemployment side of that, I think, is really pretty ordinary by the banks. It's profit.
Jean, I mean, you were right. I mean, whatever you think of cash, in a situation where the power is down, and we have seen that, and with the summer coming upon us, I mean, who knows when we'll see it again. I mean, you do need to have cash stashed away as an emergency, Jane. I've seen this reporting on, various fires and earthquakes and things. If you don't have power, you can't buy anything.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the risk that as we get, more and more of a digital society, that, you don't have rights to the money that is yours in a way. And I can understand that, people get frustrated. I get frustrated around the fact, well, hang on, let me make this choice, make it part of my experience. It's my hard-earned cash again, and that we're being corralled into not have that choice. And as you said, even the risk of, big organisations and have hacking and things like that. So digital is not ironclad, There's a lot of holes that can happen to our assets, essentially, and that being corralled in that way, I think, is a real challenge.
I will take a couple of quick calls before we get to the 4:30 news headlines. Phil from Blakeview, what are your thoughts?
Hello, Jules. I think that the banks have become dictators. They are deciding what we'll do and how we will do it. And I think the one weapon that we have is to insist at every opportunity that we use cash. And that would be a step towards disempowering the bank to some extent.
I think they'd fight back, Phil, but that's a good point of view. Let's go to the Barossa, hear from Carol. Hi, Carol. We're talking about cash and its resurgence in the UK and whether that could happen in Australia. What are your thoughts?
I'm absolutely into cash. I will not use, I've got 3 credit cards. I will not use a credit card for something small. I'm not going to walk into a shop, buy a cup of coffee with a credit card. And if they don't take credit card, I walk out. Okay. I take cash, I'll walk out. And I think it's just bone lazy on people's behalf not to carry cash. A lot of them don't even carry a wallet or a purse. No, it's all on my phone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always work. And I walk out of the supermarket with my bag of groceries when everything's down. Well, I've got mine, I've paid.
Thank you, Carol. We'll take one more call. Let's go to Mount Gambier, and Adam joins us. G'day, Adam.
How are you?
Good, Adam. Your thoughts on cash?
Yeah, I was just saying to your helper there, I was reading an article, they reckon the average Australian using Tap and Go will pay $1,500 a year in fees. And, so which is insignificant, so it's a good cost-saving measure. I've got better things to do with $1,500 than give it to the banks.
True. I mean, there are fees. I mean, I guess it would vary to everyone, but I guess there are some fees that you do incur tap and going, and, you know, I guess you're paying for the convenience. But anyway, Jane, Monica Jones. I mean, there seems to be two sentiments here. Many people obviously are angry at the banks dictating them in a certain direction away from cash because they like the convenience. And we began this conversation with the younger generation, I guess, finding cash for themselves to help them save money and manage their budget. So, look, I think the death of cash has probably been, overrated a little bit. It's certainly in decline, but maybe it will make a comeback in some sections of the community.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it will always stay in circulation. Nice pun there.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important piece. And I think what the young are trying to do is just to get more connected to their funds in a way that they probably never have done before, because children now or teenagers now are now coming up in a generation without cash. My generation, generations above, cash was what I remember being paid in cash when I first started working. It was that little yellow envelope that had my name on it. It's really about connection. The more that we connect with our money, how much we've got, how much we have in our costs, the better we're going to have at financial well-being. And it is that connecting piece. And I think that is an enduring kind of piece that we all need to think about.
Thank you, Jane. Really enjoyed the chat.
Great, thanks.
Just a couple of texts. Mary says, I've only just started listening to your program. Thank you, Mary. I honestly thought I was the only person in the world using the envelope system for managing the family budget. I've been doing it for almost 30 years and it works a treat. By December, the Christmas envelope is quite full and takes the pressure off coming up with money for gifts. Long live cash. And the Reserve Bank of Australia on tap and go fees have revealed that these fees add up, and the average Australian is forking out around $460 a year for the price of tap and going. So $460 a year.